Georgine, co-founder and CTO of GGWP. Welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
For those not in the know, what is GGWP? What do you do?
Yeah, so GGWP stands for Good Game Well Played, which I think most people in gaming would know. We do AI-based content moderation. It's multimodal. We support different channels, including text chat, voice chat, reports, gameplay, and then of course we have systems to allow automation around it. So we have a UI around it, and we have automated sanctioning, nudges, notifications, and so forth.
Perfect. And Dennis Fong has been on the podcast. So
That's right.
if you haven't listened to that, type Dennis Fong, Deconstructor of Fun, and you'll find it. YouTube, Spotify, and so forth. But we're not here to talk about GGWP, and we're not here to talk about Dennis Fong. We are here to talk about bots. Um, why are bots in gaming a problem?
So I think the biggest reason it's a problem is it just creates these adverse player experiences, right? Like people can cheat using bots. Obviously, bots do other things too, but that's the main reason that I think people talk about bots in gaming.
But there are good experiences with bots as well. Like when I start playing a new game, especially if it's a shooter, I need a little bit of a human on bot action to get me going. I
That's
don't
right.
want to go PvP right away.
No, that's totally fair. And I think the difference is like which are the bots that the game creates and they want to allow, versus which are the bots that players create. I mean, sometimes even they're not totally bad, right? Like if you think about an MMO, you have like, I don't know, like a suboptimal inventory management system, and the game just hasn't built it yet or prioritized it yet. Humans can, or players can get together and the community can build these tools and use it. And those are a little bit more gray. Like the game might actually want it as a feature and just didn't get to it, or they decided not to have it as a feature for some reason. Um, Training bots are a great example of that, right? Like I don't know, take a game like League of Legends, right? Kind of wish they might have more bots at lower levels,
Exactly.
maybe leading into it. Games like Fortnite, Brawl Stars, a lot of these games like do a pretty good job of like onboarding the player into that experience. Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about like when we talk about bots being a problem, what are the problematic bots?
Yeah. So I'll go with I guess the worst type first, right? The competitive ones are probably the ones that most players think are bad, like meaning, or rather, I should say, anti-competitive ones. Things like aim bots, for example, in a shooter,
Mhm.
right? Wall hacks in a shooting game. Those are like super bad in most settings. Nobody wants that at all. And then there's like bots in like a World of Warcraft, right, where it changed the economy. So they're bad from the perspective of if I'm a player that's been grinding for all this time, it kind of devalues the stuff that I've been doing. But even that one, I guess if you really split hairs and argue it, it could help some games, right? When you have these new players, still you can buy these weapons and buy this loot that you otherwise would have not been able to get. Yeah,
Yeah, I feel like every time I play these competitive games, everybody has bots except myself. So I definitely feel the pain.
right. Oh, I'm bad enough where I can't really tell sometimes if they have a bot or not. It just feels that way for sure.
And how do they shape the player behavior? Of course, your company is really focused on creating positive experiences in multiplayer games. Um, how do these bots create that negative experience? Of course, apart from you losing all the time.
Yeah, I mean, I think that losing all the time does manifest itself in several ways, right? People become frustrated. People quit the game, which is obviously the worst thing for the game, or they move to a different game, or they might actually take it out on somebody, right? So, like, we look at like content moderation. So we're looking at toxicity, for example. Some of those things are correlated, right? If you see somebody cheating in a game, it gets you very frustrated about a game. So it's good to know when, hey, this person only lashed out because they thought this other person was cheating. Like maybe
Hmm.
it's not okay that they said, these terms, but you kind of understand that a little bit more, and it just creates a negative environment for the game outside of that. Even beyond just the competition or not being able to win, there's like cascading effects, right? That create a negative community. And then pretty soon you go into like a Reddit, and you go into like Twitch or YouTube, and all you see are these clips of people like cheating, when in reality, like I mean, depending on the game, like most have some handle on it. It's not that extreme, but it's a big part of the experience that players themselves talk about.
Yeah. So essentially, bots can have positive and negative experience at the same time, depending on what type of bots we're talking about and how they're being used.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And especially, I mean, like if the game makes the bot, I think it's great. Like you think about um, what did, you know, computer controlled enemies look like in the past and their sophistication or lack thereof compared to like games today. Obviously, we can do way more, right? So in that sense, like bots from that perspective have improved a lot and they make and shape the game in much better ways today.
Hmm. And what are the most effective strategies of detecting or even preventing bots? And why do some studios really struggle with enforcing this good policy of anti-cheating through bots?
Yeah, it's
Game devs. We know that great gameplay is what players love, but integrating metagame features like challenges, progression, rewards is crucial for retention and monetization. However, coding them is a tedious and time-consuming process. That's why top studios have turned to Hero. Hero provides a complete suite of battle-tested metagame features that are quick to implement, letting you spend more time on the core gameplay experience. Ready to ship fully featured, engaging games? Check out Hero today by clicking the link below.
I mean, it's like any other security area where it's a bit of a cat and mouse game. It's impossible to completely prevent. Um, like certain things you can do pretty easily. Like if you think about AFKing, for example, isn't really a bot problem per se, although people call human players bots when they AFK oftentimes.
Well, they
Um,
turn into bots when they AFK. Like sometimes they just start using, so they become
right.
bots.
That's actually a good use case for bots, right?
Yeah.
So then your teammate's
So,
slightly less bad
I'm
because they at
I'm a
least
I'm
move
a
around.
pro bot person. It seems like it.
Right. So that the detection itself can be resource intensive. And ultimately it's a prioritization question because if you're going to do it, let's say from a database approach, you can do anomaly detection algorithms pretty reasonably, but you need to collect a lot of data. So that's resource intensive, and you just have to decide on the priority of that. Um, one thing to understand though is just in an extreme case, obviously no one would do this, but like if me and you made a game and no one played
Mhm.
the game, no one's cheating in the game either. Because
Yeah,
in reality, success creates that incentive in the first
I've
place.
made some of those games.
Yeah, so no cheating problems in those communities.
Yeah.
But that's kind of the counterbalance, right? Like whenever you're like the biggest game on the planet, everybody wants to play, and then if it's competitive, everybody wants to win at that game. If you can collect something, people want to figure out like ways to better collect it. So that's what you're kind of running up against. And then beyond the players themselves, there's like this underlying motivation from other groups, right? So if I can make money as I don't know, a security hacker, and I see games as an evergreen space, and it's low risk because it's not as big a financial fraud. It's not going to be, um, regulated in that way or punished in that way. I might make tools, right, for Call of Duty or something like this. Yeah,
Hmm. You said it's really resource intensive to it can be resource intensive to
that's right.
find the bots. How do you make that sort of I mean, it's a business decision at that point of how much resources do you want to invest into tackling the bots? Like, what's the calculus that studios should be looking at?
Yeah, I mean, I think as a player, we want all studios to be like at these gold standards. The reality is, like Activision just has like a different amount of money than like an indie studio would, especially pre-launch. They have to make some of these
Yeah,
calls
they
pretty
got that Microsoft money.
right. Yeah, everybody else doesn't, right? And that's kind of the reality of it. So they have
Yeah,
to make these calls like ahead of time,
yeah,
and it's tough without knowing like how big your community is. So I think a lot of the games that have like these biggest issues are actually the ones that have this unsurprising success, right? If you pop off, you didn't really plan to be like a 10 million MAU game or like a 50 million MAU game. So you wouldn't have like prioritized live ops servicing like that. There's like low hanging fruit, right? You can start with like the third party anti cheats at a minimum. But in terms of like building really complex stuff internally to detect on top of it, yeah, it gets progressively harder. And logging data and running these models in a reactive way is also very expensive. And then you might not even have a legal team, right? I guess that's the other side of it that we haven't talked
yeah.
about. Like legal deterrence does matter. It does, it'll make like an 18-year-old think twice about going in your specific game and go on to a different title.
Oh, so you can sue people for
Yeah.
using
Yeah. I mean, you're not going to
you
sue an
can't.
individual cheater, but you would
Yeah.
sue like a cheat maker. And then that
Mhm.
kind of deters them, right? Like if you're like an Activision or an EA, it's like part of the cost of doing business. But you have this massive publisher, so you have the resources to do that. And even if you don't win, it creates enough of a deterrence.
Wow, interesting. Okay, well that makes total sense. Maybe that comes in the loading screen. If you cheat, we sue.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's a
Yeah. I
that's
mean,
a big one.
even like in the community announcements, like even if you don't sue, like I think games that like do a good job of saying like, "Hey, we banned 50,000 cheaters this week." It's like, yes, your players are frustrated. It's like, what? There were 50,000 cheaters this week,
Yeah.
but people need to know, right? And sometimes if you don't see it, it makes you feel frustrated, right? Yeah, I think as a player, you report, and then if you don't see someone get banned for it, that can be really frustrating. But it is somewhat rewarding, right, to see that person actually get punished and be informed of that.
Hmm. And are there any gray areas where automation or AI assisted play is acceptable? Like, how do you draw the line?
Yeah. So I mean, I mentioned like the inventory managed ones, just like
Hmm.
from personal experience playing some of these games. Other ones like the trading card ones, where like it's kind of painful to open like one pack at a time, right? So you have ways to open a lot. I think those could be gray, just because the game didn't do it, so you're not really sure if the game did it intentionally that way. Like if you take a game like I don't know, like a Monopoly Go, there's essentially like an auto roller, right? And they put it in there on purpose, so you know that they wanted that in the design.
Hmm.
But think about all these other games with like cooldowns and especially like on the mobile side of things where they
Yeah.
don't have auto action X. So was it by game design? So maybe that's a gray area, but I generally tend to think it's okay. I think where it gets really tricky is like once you're affecting some other player, right? Like meaning just because I have more blank doesn't mean this other player loses, and that's where cheating is an issue, right? If you have an aimbot, my uh, my chance of winning decreases. So now you're affecting me as a player. On these single player mobile games, there's still some impact because there's like leaderboards, right? And it's like, how do I catch that guy? But it matters a little bit less. And I think that's kind of where you get in the gray area. Ultimately, you're deciding. I think you would support things that make it more fun for a single player. So if you're like aimbotting in a, I don't know, like a, I don't know, say it's like a God of War type game, single player game. Do I care if someone else cheats in that? You know,
No,
Sony still might, right? Or the studio still might, but I
you already
personally
bought
don't care if
it.
someone else. Right, I don't really care that much if someone else does, and I think that's ultimately like where that gray area lies. If you're doing these things that don't impact other players.
Yeah, yeah, makes sense. What are like? I mean, you're really invested into this and have studied this a lot, and actually creating tools to prevent this. But what are the regional trends in bot usages, and are they different? Like, are Western cheaters, bot cheaters, different than the Asian bot cheaters?
Yeah, I think a little bit. I think it ties more to the demographics and the types of games that people play. So if you think about North America, right, you have like a slightly higher proportion of things like competitive shooters. So it is a lot of like the aim bots and wall hacks and stuff that we talked about. A lot of the cheating would be like teaming in a battle royale or like boosting for rank. So a lot of it's around competitive. In Asia, you see, more mobile, more MMOs. So there's a lot more like gold farming, progression in like these more grindy games. And then there's a lot more like support or like almost a market system around like real money trading for accounts, for resources in these various games.
Hmm. Like if you're rich billionaire, you can hire somebody to play Path of Exiles for you.
That's right.
just to flex on everybody. That's a good move. And that's considered cheating, right?
It depends. I mean, this kind of goes back to the
Depends
gray
who you
area.
ask.
That's right. That's right.
um, what are the trends in bot cheating? Like, how has it evolved over the years? And what does the future look like?
Yeah. I mean, we talked a little bit about like the early days of um, like enemy combatants, right? You have predictable movement patterns, like limited pathfinding. You think about like, I don't know, like a Goomba from like Super Mario, right? Pretty straightforward movement, or like Pac-Man ghosts. Um, in the 2000s, we had things like, multiplayer come in a lot more. So the incentives to cheat really started coming up from that. And then with these larger progression systems, you had like reasons to farm and sell, like in these MMOs. I think more recent, at least for me, like just seeing like, for example, like with Dota and OpenAI, it kind of showed you like the upper bound of like how good bots could be, right? Like you had AI actually defeating a pro Dota team, which really looked different than like, I don't know, like the Mario IO things that the original neural networks were trained off of in gaming. And then you have things like Fortnite. Like my son loves to play. He thinks the bots are very realistic. I don't. But you can see that they've definitely gone further, and they can mix in bots at different levels so that you can't immediately tell every single bot. The finals recently came out, right? Or I guess depending on how you view recent in the setting, they had really good bots, I thought. So you definitely see that progression realism. And I think that's part of it too. Like people don't like losing all the time, but they also don't want to know that they're playing against bots. So you kind of have to find the balance in those things. Yeah, so definitely just way more advanced, like um, AI in the games.
So AI is advancing. That means that the bots will be advancing. How soon are bots playing against bots?
Yeah, I mean, if you think about like these games, like Fortnite that I mentioned, they already are playing against bots. I mean, most players can just easily come in and kill all the bots.
Mm.
They could tune up the difficulty to make them harder and harder as well, so you can have them in more of these games. Um, and this is true, like not just in these shooters I'm describing, but you think about sports games, the humans controlling one person at a time. So if you think about like, I don't know, NBA, Madden, FIFA, you have all these other bots on the field, and they do get smarter in each iteration. So you already have a lot of that today.
And okay, so we have that today. It's rapidly evolving. Bots are becoming smarter and more adjustable for
Yeah.
different scenarios and different play styles and different user bases, almost personalized, if you will. Is this good or bad for gaming?
In general, I think it's mostly good. Um, and there's probably some ways that it can be exploited in a negative way. I mean, just imagine if you're playing on your headset and you have like the equivalent of like your Alexa or Siri in game. Like that would make management of like, inventory, management of equipment, setting options and configurations just a lot easier. So like that's like a bot that we don't have in a ton of games, but I could easily see us having.
Hmm.
Right. I think better NPCs, for example, like add to the immersion and depth.
So, to summarize it, bots are not as negative as we could. Like, bots are not holistically negative, nor are they positive. They can be used in different types of forms, but you have to have the right type of tools to basically notice the malicious bots, or it will hurt your retention.
This podcast is brought to you by AppsFlyer. In today's digital world, understanding your app's journey from discovery to download is more than just insightful, it's essential. Enter AppsFlyer, the leader in mobile attribution and marketing analytics that allows you to measure the full potential of your marketing efforts, making every ad dollar work smarter. With AppsFlyer, that's your new reality. Dive deep into data-driven insights that reveal exactly where your users come from and how they'll interact with your app. AppsFlyer, where your app's potential meets performance.
Yeah, I think that's a fair way to put it. And I do think, like it might, I mean, I think it's worth noting that some bots players would view as positive that the game would not as well. Right. Like going back to like these gold farming cases, as like a player, pretty grindy. You might not like that it costs this much currency to get a haircut in 2K. And the fact that you can buy it for like 20% of the price from like someone in China gold farming wouldn't be viewed as a negative to you, but would be viewed as a negative to like a 2K, right? Or like a Blizzard for like WoW. Maybe that speaks to different needs that a player might have than a game might. Certainly that would be considered cheating from the terms of service in a game. But yeah, overall, I would agree with that statement. They can be good or bad, just depending on how they're applied.
As a final question, like what should company be looking for or adjusting their operations regarding the rapid sophistication of bots?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I think one thing is just they should be in tune with their community. Seeing what type of bots the community makes tells them a lot about the different player gaps or what players feel are gaps out there. This could be resolved at times with different game design. But as far as like the evolving tooling itself, I think I think it isn't asked to spend additional time, especially in success. You need to plan for that success in advance, and really just there's way more information out there that you can leverage to build these better models to detect some of these things earlier in the process.
What are the good sources to figure this out and to be proactive in the bots matter?
Yeah. So I think one thing that I found that's pretty interesting is that there's less of this share from what I can tell in gaming versus other areas. I know that some of the security teams of some of the large AAA publishers do meet. But from what I can tell, it's much smaller. Like my past life, I probably spent more time in defense and in financial services. And those groups, like you have these massive like CIO meetups. So you get like these trends and you can share these things much more easily. So I'd actually ask games to consider doing more of that earlier on. And this is really only the AAAs, right? Like until you get to that size, I think a challenge is like, I can't really compare a game to like, a bank with 100,000 people. You just don't have that same resourcing. So you're sending like your one junior security engineer out. But just to let that person go out there and talk to other games, because ultimately you're going to see some of these same problems, right? If I'm like creating a name bot, it's actually not that different from game to game.
So CTO summits, more of those.
Yes.
Sounds like a lot of fun.
Yes. At least for people like me.
Well, George, thank you so much for joining for a quick Do It Better podcast, talk about bots in gaming. Can't wait to have you back on the podcast to talk about other detailed topics. So thank you so much for making the time.
Thank you.
And you can reach out to George. There's a link of his LinkedIn profile below if you want to ask more questions about bots, and maybe a bot will answer your questions. So on that note, thanks everybody for listening.
You did it. You made it to the end of the episode. As a fan of the show, it would help us out if you'd subscribe and leave us a review on the podcast service of your choice. Those stars and likes, while a small action on your part, mean a lot to us and help to grow the show. More importantly, are you a member of the Deconstructor of Fun Slack group? If you have 5 years or more of games industry experience, go to deconstructoroffun.com/Slack and apply to join. Join the games industry best professional community filled with peers always willing to lend a hand, or subscribe to our newsletter to get all the latest insights from the Deconstructor of Fun content creators. Thanks for listening.
Georging.